related to the one sample G test. So one sample G test conducted when need to compare the sample mean and the population mean. So we have the population mean, the complete data mean, and the sample mean. So I want to compare them. So G score formula one sample. So like we have the sample mean is X bar. It is the sample mean. And the population mean is this one, mu. And population of the standard deviation and the sample size which I have choose from the population. So let's take an example. Suppose we want to test whether or not girls on average score higher than 600 on SAT verbal section. Suppose we are just assume test whether or not girl on an average score higher than 600. Suppose we also know the standard deviation of the girls at verbal section score is 100. So there is the data deviation is 100. It is the standard deviation. So we collect the data of the 20 girl by using random sample and their marks. So I choose the 20 girls marks. Finally, we also set our alpha value, the significant value, the 5%. So now I want to check. So the all girls score is higher than 600 or equivalent. So it is just a formula manually. X bar mean, population mean, sample mean minus population mean, and population standard deviation, and square root of the sample size. It is just the G test formula to find out manually. So I have defined the one predefined some library like math, numpy, stat models, and the scipy. So firstly I want to, it is just the sample marks. Now I want to calculate some value.
Sachin,
Yeah.
sorry. Now you are importing the math module, you are importing NumPy as, and you're defining it as NP. Then you're importing the stats model.
Yeah.
Now, other cases you said import Z-test as Z-test.
So the stat model.
Sorry, what is norm?
Norms basically the normalization to take some random values. It is just the scipy stat function inside the package norms. So there are package basically now I want to choose some random value.
It chooses automatically or you choose it?
Automatically. Because whenever we are talking about the automatically, so that means a random. It can be choose the position 1, position 20, position 30. So for the better accuracy.
So this library is choosing that random sample.
So firstly, I want to apply the method 1, the manually. Like if someone want to calculate manually the G test value, so you can see you have to perform so many effort. Like firstly, sample mean. like sample mean, np dot mean, like sample
Sample underscore marks.
marks. Understood. So mean are there. So sample mean I have find it. Now I want to find out the sample size.
First, you should find the sample size, then the sample means, or
Because
is
I want to perform the G test. So whenever you perform the G test, so we have a formula. If we want to calculate the analysis of G test, so we have to calculate the sample mean, population standard deviation, then we can put them, then we get the output if we want to perform manually. So here we are just calculating manually. So you can, and after that I will calculate with the help of G test function. Now you can see after the difference, the algorithm and the automatic function that is provided by the stat model G test. Okay. Now I want to like count the size, like np dot count. So count is a function to count the value, but I want to count all the value. Basically, these are the okay. So I want to count the non-zero. That means actual value from the sample marks. And now the population mean are given. Suppose we have the population mean is 600. It is just the assumptions. Population mean is 600. And the standard deviation, like the standard deviation is already given 100, is 100. So the fourth thing is already given 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I can apply the manually. So you can see there are so many effort are required to firstly to find out. And sample mean minus the population mean. Then to divide by population standard deviation and the sample size. Population standard deviation, like standard deviation, and you can also give the small name SD. If the name is very lengthy, so you can use the small name like SD, standard deviation. But for the more clarity, you can use this one.
why you separate them by underscore?
Yeah. So the underscore basically, you can also give the name to this one, but for the more clarity, standard deviation. So it's the two word. I use the underscore, but you
Can I
cannot
use
pass this one. You cannot pass this one.
cannot? Can I use space?
No, because when you pass the space, so it will be considered the two separate thing. Only the underscore is allowed whenever you are naming multiple words, but it is the single. Standard deviation is a single variable.
Hmm.
And now we have divided by the sample size. So I want to find out the square root. So if you want to find out the square root, so we have the mathematical function sqrt. So the sqrt function is available inside the math library in this one, math sqrt. Now you can pass the sample size.
Can you explain this formula you write it, whether it's matching with the formula in that?
The p value, or you can set the significant value ALPH. You can give any name, but most of the standard we can say the alphabet value like 0.05, and
What
you
is
can
that?
pass here, but no need to pass here directly. So now I want to check the Z value is less than to the given value or not. So firstly I
But if you
want
look
to
at
check,
the figures, it's clearly it's more than 600.
yeah.
The marks.
So you can see after performing this formula, I got the value 1.8. We already know the sample mean, sample size, population mean, and I want to also check the sample mean. You can see the sample mean is 641 and population mean is 600. So population mean is like null hypothesis, that means it is okay, or otherwise the sample mean is different. So that is a thing. So we are saying the most of the average of the population data is 600, but the standard deviation is 100. So there is some like the deviation, and in this data standard deviation of sample like np dot std sample. So you can see the population mean is 600, population deviation is 100, sample mean is 641, and sample standard deviation is 97. And after applying the G test, I find out the value. So the critical value basically, if you find out the value 1.83, so if the value decided this critical value, so it depend on you. You can set critical value 1.96. So you can check if Z score is greater than or is less than, is less than critical value. That means less than this one. So we print null hypo thesis is accepted. Otherwise, we reject the hypothesis. Now, if you try to do this, the null hypothesis is accepted because the value is less than 1.96. Okay. So firstly, we have to define the critical value. If I define the critical value like 1.65, now the question is different. Reject the null hypothesis because 183. So the major thing is that firstly we have to identify the significant
P-value.
value or the alpha value or the critical value.
You say less than 1.8 or something, but if this is uh,
So you can see I have applied so many hard work in this particular area. Okay. So the hard coded I there. So now I want to apply the built-in function in Python. Second method using built-in function gtest. Okay,
built-in or built?
built-in function. Built-in, that means a built-in function.
No,
uh,
you are writing in or no? Okay.
Built-in, like the built-in functions is the ready-made function which we can
Yeah,
use easily.
which is easy.
Yeah, and now I can pass the gtest scr score, and the we need the p value. And if I want to use the z test mentioned here, and if I want to use the z test and the sample marks only, that's it. And the population I have there, the value, the population mean already given. And now I want to find out the value of the z test. Print z test score, and p value. And one more thing, like the p value greater than so the similar. Both result are same. Okay, so there are two methods. First method I have find out only this way, and the second method, and the first method is a manual assumption. No one use the manual because the manual is not a good practice in Python for the data scientist and for the statistician. So I have discussed this such kind of example. I also want to use the NumPy NP, and I want to check the mean of city A, NP dot mean city A and city B. So both city mean are different. So now if I want to perform the G-test analysis on the both city, so I want to print the p value. So the similar I have applied these particular things like the two test analysis between the two cities. So the state model start weight dot G test, and it will demand the x and the x2, that means sample 1 sample 2, and the value by default the 0. So the test mean based on the normal distribution 1 or 2 sample. If we want to supply 1, so it can work. If we want to supply 2, it can work. So the value 1 sample case value mean is x1. Under the null hypothesis, if the two sample case value difference between mean of x1 and mean of x2, we have the two group and we want to like differentiate under the null hypothesis. So the statistician first to find out the mean and mean 2, then to minus the value. Like take an example, I have checked out the value, difference mean, comma, the NP mean of first city, so it is the difference. Now I want to differentiate also after the mean. So you can see the difference of the p value is also the same. So there is no effect. There is no effect. The values become the same. You can see. So the value basically is greater than 30. So the normally it is considered to the G test. If we not set this value, so the algorithm will automatically take. Okay.
The algorithm will automatically what?
So the automatically understood the data set is greater than the sample is greater than to the 30.
Oh, okay.
Okay, because the Python library and the stat model is a very advanced. Like if we set the value, so okay. If we not set the value, so it will be understood because I am just using specify the G test.
Okay.
And now I want to check out. Now the question is that So the mean of this sample, okay, and mean of this sample. So what is the difference mean of this one, the mean of this one? So you can see 8,
Minus 6. Yep.
okay. So 8 is a difference.
Okay.
And we are assuming the 100 is a like one sitting.
Yeah.
It is null hypothesis like that.
Okay.
And after that, I want to find out the difference. So again, I apply this mean, I find out the 100. And again, I minus the city B. So it becomes the this one. We reject the null hypothesis because the already the 100 is the ground truth.
Okay.
So I mention here the p value less than 5. So sufficient evidence to reject the null hypothesis because the value is less than the 5.
Okay.